All right, our regularly scheduled meeting of Tuesday, October 13th is in session. Are there any changes to the agenda? All right, then first up is a presentation of the schematic plans for the police edition.
Yeah, Council, I'll lead this off with just some introductory remarks, and then we'll turn it over to the design team. As I pointed out in my cover memo, and just for people on the watching on TV and in the audience tonight, Council did get some hard copy drawings of these schematic plans, but last July, Council selected out of many alternatives that you had looked at an addition to the east side of this building. We're calling it the northeast option, and you authorized the staff to enter into a contract with Intergroup Architects to prepare schematic designs. As I pointed out to you in my cover memo, in July, the main differences that you're seeing from July and those kind of very preliminary estimates that Scott Brown gave you is tonight you are seeing a very complete package where we have included the what would have been vacated existing space. So this is a much more complete package than you have seen at any stage of the game. Tonight what we'd like to do is have the design team walk you through it. We have a PowerPoint that walks you through the floor space, the functionality, the design, and then answer any questions. If you've got budget questions, as I said, this did push us, the estimate pushes us slightly over the $6 million cap that you set at your workshop, but it's a very conservative budget, and there's $600,000 of contingency in the budget. So we feel at this point it's very, well, quite likely that we will come within budget. But if you still have concerns about the cost estimates, we'll be happy to discuss those too. I do want to emphasize the really thoroughness of this product that you're going to see tonight. This brought together the design team, Chief Coogan, many people from the police department, and all the professionals that are needed to design a building like this, the mechanical engineers, the civil engineers. So this is a substantially complete product that you're going to see tonight, and we think we're probably at a 90% confidence level on the cost. So unless you have any questions right up front, I'm prepared to turn it over to the design team and have them walk you through the product that we're recommending to you.
Any questions, Council?
I do have one.
Yes, ma'am.
So we had originally said we'd be at 85% confidence level at this stage, and then the next stage would be 95%. So
I'll have Ned White or somebody. I think at this point, even though this is called schematic, they went perhaps drilled a little deeper down than schematic, and I'll have Ned talk to you about that.
yeah, well, so then my question is, if we approve this tonight, would we still go for another 5% confidence level?
I'll have him address that.
Okay, so both of those.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Who's lead off, Ned, you or Chris? I think all of you remember Ned White with Intergroup, Chris Sibelia with Intergroup. Chris, just wave your hand. And then Scott Brown with ARC, who's been with us. I think he was a college intern when he started this project with us 10 years ago. So.
Got to click it to use it.
Should be coming off. He'll prompt it up.
Good evening. Do I need to be sworn in, Mayor Clark?
No.
Okay. Ned White with Intergroup Architects. Thank you for having us this evening. I want to first start out by thanking Jim, his senior staff, Chief Coogan and her staff. They've been just phenomenal to work with through this process. Probably, we were just talking about this, probably one of our most knowledgeable clients in terms of really understanding what they want and really having a good grasp on their needs and being able to read plans and understand what we do. A lot of clients, we spend a whole lot of time educating them and just what are we doing, what are you looking at? And you guys have an outstanding staff that really understands what they're trying to get to and really understands what we're presenting. So that's made our job much easier, and it's been a pleasure working with them. With that, I'll get started. This is an overall site plan showing the major construction. The addition, as Jim mentioned, the new 14,000-foot addition is at the northeast corner of the site. That's the shaded area in brown. And then there'd be a new parking area to the south of the existing City Hall and just west of the main entry. We'll get into each of these in more specifics as we go. The first phase is building the additional parking lot at the south. That's 64 new spaces, and that has to occur because we'll be losing about 25 spaces in the addition area, and then we'll also have some spaces out of service during construction. So we do that as the first phase of construction so that we have parking available and never disrupt that. That parking is designed so that at this time we project that we'd only lose one existing tree, and we're putting a major landscape island in that parking bay, much like you have in the existing site. So we're mimicking what you have there. The new police addition is 14,250 square feet, 2 stories at the northeast corner of the site, as I mentioned. And then we're proposing to renovate approximately 6,700 square feet of the existing building. The new parking area, as I mentioned earlier, has 64 spaces at southeast corner. As part of that project, we're going to do some minor improvements to the turn from the main entry from Berry to soften that turn so it's not a hard right angle. You can see there the curves are softened. They'll make traffic flow easier. We're also proposing a right in and right out of the new parking lot on the west side, which should ease congestion on the main drive as well. Currently, we have 220 spaces, which are required for the existing building. With the new addition, that adds 48 spaces for a total requirement of 268 spaces by your code. We're providing existing spaces of 229. We're losing 23 at the northeast lot. We're adding 64 for a total of 270 spaces. The overall first floor plan shows the entire addition to the northeast to the upper right, and this also shows the remodeled areas within the first floor. We'll get into those more specifically as we go through this. On the first floor, all this area shaded in blue is secure police area. So anyone with access here is either a police officer or escorted by a police officer. The public entry, if you will, is down at the lower entry area, same point as it is now where police records are, and we'll go into the specifics of that later, but there's a secure door right there. Overall second floor plan, police activities are basically north of that hallway, and so we have the addition up to the upper right, and then the remodel area just to the left of there in the existing police function area. The secure police zone up there is basically the entire new addition and the existing stair. The rest of it is areas that can be open to the general public and to the rest of the facility for use. And when we get into the specifics, you'll understand that a little bit more. The phase 2 construction is the addition to the building for the police activities. One of the things that we've looked at pretty carefully here is, unlike some businesses, the police operation is 24/7, 365 days a year. So we have to keep them in business the whole time this is going on. So one of the concepts has been to create the addition so that we can move people into the addition and not disrupt police activities. Then we'd renovate the existing spaces and move people into those spaces. So there'd always be a place for people to do their function with minimal disruption. The first floor, you see the lower half of the addition is all the evidence activities. At the very bottom of the plan, it's almost cut off there, is the main entry for the police officers. As you go up from there, try to do this. This is where they drop off evidence, new evidence lockers, the evidence intake area. This is all secure. This entire lower section is the evidence area. This area over here is the high bay, the 2-story evidence room. We're proposing right now to only put in racking for the first level, and future expansion would either be a rack mezzanine or higher racks for evidence storage in the future when that's necessary. On the north side of the hallway here, we've got all the lab facilities, starting with the computer and video lab, the photo lab, photo room for taking pictures of victims, volunteer area, the chem lab with its equipment, bio vestibule connecting it to the vehicle exam area where the vehicles are brought in from the east. And then we've also got provisions in here for some additional storage. This is the exiting stair from the second floor that comes out through this area. Again, this entire area from these doors up is secure. Actually, the entire first floor is secure. Oops. Didn't want to do that. Second floor addition, which is of course on top of this, is all basically detective area and secure area. So the entry here, the secure entry, this area right down here is where suspects would be brought through down this area to 2 hard interview rooms. We've got the conference room, which is also serves as the viewing room for the video for the 2 hard interview. The war room is the setup for the major crime activity investigation. We have our victim witness advocate area here, sergeants, lieutenant commander, 8 detectives' offices, and 2 other offices up here. This being the upper bay above the vehicle bay, and this, of course, the upper bay above the evidence storage. Next, we've got the, this is the exterior view. This is just showing you on the site the view you're going to be looking at next, which is the view you would see as you approach the building from the existing drive. What we've tried to do, the task we were given was to come up with an addition that was compatible to the existing City Hall, but not a copy. It had its own unique character, and yet it blended in. So what we did is we are proposing a brick that is very similar in color and style to what the existing building is built out of. Aluminum-clad panels in this connection, sunscreens. We're going to use poured concrete at this corner, which is the vehicle exam bay, which mimics the fire station just here on the to the south of this picture. So we go to the northeast corner looking from the northeast. Again, you see the use of the brick, the concrete element to pick up on the fire station, and then this is the detective area on the second floor, which again we're using the aluminum panels over the brick base to try to pick up on the same sort of architectural feel as the existing City Hall. And then the view from the park, which is one of the most important views because this is the one that people using the park and a lot of the public will see, since the Rio Grande view is sort of the service side of the building. So this view we've sort of accentuated on the second floor by cantilevering it out slightly, introducing a slight curve, again sunscreens on the west windows, and then aluminum panels, tinted glass, the brick base, and then the windows below are into the hallway that's by evidence and by the labs. First floor renovations, there's basically, we've got about 4 areas of renovations, and I'll get into each of those individually. The first is an expanded and renovated locker room. This is necessary because the police equipment and the lockers they have now are just totally incompatible. The lockers they have now are much like a high school locker, very small metal lockers. We need to go with a 2x2 metal locker, or 2x2 locker that would actually have a bench with storage underneath for boots, shoes, etc. So the first phase would consist of remodeling the locker room. This way, we don't take that out of business. The police officers can still use the showers and use the toilet facilities with temporary lockers until we have those in place. Second phase is renovating the existing training area, and in there we are creating 3 sergeants' offices, because right now there's shared offices down here that are just not working out. 6 report stations for the patrol officers to write reports, and then a meeting type area and a juvenile holding area. Next phase is a minor remodel to the restrooms, which would involve basically just cosmetic remodeling. We're not proposing any plumbing changes there. The plumbing's adequate, so it'll really be just cosmetic changes, updating some of the look and so forth in there. In the last part of this phase is renovating part of the existing evidence area into a briefing room for the patrol, traffic office, which brings the traffic officer back from the service center, and the community outreach office. So this entire area here, with the exception of the locker room, is the patrol office. And basically, as I mentioned, it incorporates expanded renovated locker rooms, sergeant offices, report writing, open meeting, minor restroom, and then the briefing. Next area is to relocate Chief Coogan from location on the second floor where she currently is, which is totally out of the flow and pretty much inaccessible to the public and also not convenient to our officers, to an area central to activities of the force, particularly to the patrol offices near the briefing room. It's also within the secure area. This door right here is the entry to the secure area. So the general public, unless they're escorted or brought in there, would not come through this area here. We're moving, right now, the current report desk is out in the hallway, and we're creating an area right here for a report desk, so there'll be a dedicated space for an officer to take a report from a citizen. And then also the records area, which is right down in here, it's slightly off the slide, has 3 people working in there now. It's extremely cramped. So we're expanding that area by giving them some more workspace here, a copier, closing the door that exists right now and giving them some more workspace along the front, moving the door to this area. The second floor renovation is basically in the area where the detectives now sit, which is this area here, and where the Chief Coogan's office is. Training room, basically, I'm going to walk through this quickly and then go back and explain one of the rationales behind the whole plan of how we ended up where we were. But the training room, the concept here was to create a training room that was multi-purpose and not strictly only for police use. So basically what we've done here is created a training room that can be used by the general public off hours when the police officers aren't using it. It also can be used by other people within the City Hall when the police officers aren't using it. To facilitate that, we are using a movable partition to be able to separate that room into two functional uses. Each side has a serve-type counter, built-in counters, and a sink. So it can be used for a variety of operations. And one of the most important operations would be an emergency operations center in the event of some major emergency. And it's very accessible to make that happen. The other renovation up there is basically an area to serve the detective area. And this is a non-secure area here where victims could come into the waiting area. Scott, your pointer thing stopped working. I don't know what I did. This guy. Okay. So we've got this waiting area where the victims can come in. There's a toilet for the victims, soft interview room, victim advocate is right here. There's going to be a window to the receptionist here so she can talk to them and basically provide easy access without them crossing paths with potential suspects. And we're doing minor remodeling up in this area where the chief's office is. The chief's office is right here right now. We're proposing to enlarge or basically split her office into a commander's office, a sergeant's office, and then the existing commander's office would become a lieutenant's office. As I mentioned, the training area is multi-purpose with a movable partition. It's located outside the secure area and basically is intended to serve a number of purposes. I'm going to wait on this one, actually. Yeah, I want to go back to the... Okay. What I want to do is go back to one of the overall plans here. I think one of the things that's really important, we looked at a number of solutions here. The first inclination we had was to put the training room in the new addition. And we actually did some plans like that. The thing that we found was there's a real functional and a movement issue associated with the fact that the holding cells are down here on the first floor, and we need to be able to bring the suspects upstairs, get them to interview rooms, and keep them on a path that doesn't cross potential victims. So if we try to put the training center back here, training room, we have to create a long hallway to get back in this area. The other thing it does is then we take the training room into what's some of the prime area for offices, and put what is a part-time type use up there, and the offices end up here, basically on the alley side or the service side. So it really didn't work out well at all. So that's why, and the other thing it did is if we did it that way, if the training room was up here, it was going to pretty much force part of the detective operations to stay where they are and part of them to be here, which we felt was a real split. And then again, it would cross a public corridor to get the detectives back and forth, which we didn't want to do. So we were really trying to create a flow where victims would be totally isolated from suspects, and suspects would be in a totally secure area from the holding cell to the interview rooms and back. And this scheme seemed to address that need quite well. This is probably the fifth or sixth variation to get to this point. One of the concerns expressed both by the staff and council before was sustainability. So we're looking at the building very hard. Probably not going to suggest that we go for a LEED rating because of the expense of that. There's an added expense associated. Rather, we believe the best use of money is to design it as responsibly and sustainably as possible. So to that end, we've incorporated a number of features already, and we're still looking at a number. We're reusing the existing site area. We're preserving the open space and park to the north, staying completely out of that, and as well as out of the floodplain. The new parking we've kept to a minimum, just to the minimum zoning, so we're minimizing the site impact. Stormwater quality improvements we're going to provide on the south parking expansion, which do not exist now. And that's a lead point, incidentally. We're preserving all the existing trees right now. Our proposal only means the removal of one tree on the south side of the City Hall. Light pollution, we're going to reduce light pollution from the parking lots by higher efficiency cutoff type fixtures. The building envelope is highly insulated, R19 walls, R30 roof, and high performance glazing. We're using a white TPO reflective roof membrane, which minimizes heat gain and also minimizes the heat island effect. We're using this, right now we're proposing an energy efficient single unit VAV mechanical system, which is both very energy efficient and also very flexible and very controllable for the individual workspaces. It's probably one of the best systems out there in terms of giving overall good control to a number of spaces and yet still being very energy efficient. We're proposing a return air system with heat recovery. We're going to use water reduction plumbing fixtures, recycle materials, and also locally manufactured materials vis-a-vis the brick, steel, concrete, and carpet. Also, of course, low VOC paints, all those type of products. We're using improved air ventilation for the IAQ. And we're looking at occupancy sensors on light switches, so when a room is not occupied for a period of time, those lights will be turned off. And we're also looking at some other strategies, including photovoltaics, solar, possible green roof. All these things are still in play, and as we go into the next phase, we'll start looking at those more specifically in terms of how will they impact the budget. Other improvements that we've been able to garner as part of the project are basically, that weren't necessarily mandates, were the shared training conference facility. We're able to use this as a multi-purpose room as opposed to strictly a dedicated police room like it is now. We added space for victim assistance and interview rooms, specifically for the victims. We're going to incorporate emergency backup on critical systems, the Emergency Operations Center, evidence refrigerator, IT systems, et cetera, which are not covered now. We've got an entirely new data and phone system, voice over IP, for the police area, including 2 new server rooms. Right now, the server room is a closet about 3 foot by 4 foot and totally inadequate and not adequately cooled. We're consolidating all the evidence storage on site. The only thing that will be off-site is some very minor use over at the service center, large items like a vehicle or something like that. The on-site containers that are currently rented will go away. They won't be required anymore. And the evidence storage is designed for future flexibility and expandability. The patrol office is moved back from the Littleton Center into the service center where it should be. With that, I think I'll open up to Scott Brown to talk about budget, and we can kind of answer questions later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Brown with ARC. This budget is, I wanted to go back and kind of look at what the original scope of the project was, back when we were looking at those block diagrams. And this portion of the budget is kind of compares that original scope to the, current costs based on what we had shown previously. And right now, our budget's pretty much in line with what we had projected back then. That budget that we did, as Jim had noted, was a much more, rough square footage by area type budget, based on block diagrams. This budget, and I'll kind of go through it a little bit, the soft costs includes a number of things. It includes the security systems, teledata systems, furnishings, engineering, design fees, and some material testing as well. One of the things that this budget has that I typically don't get to at this point, that we've gone into a lot more detail, is sitting down, meeting with police group, meeting with evidence, meeting with IT and security, and going through specifically to a much more specific detail, specifically what's in each room, what's in each part of the building as far as each one of those systems. So I have a very good comfort level with what we have here, and I'll say that nothing's kind of exorbitant. We've gone through, we've priced some very reasonable furniture, and I've even assumed that we're, looking at potentially having some used furniture, thinking that there's probably some opportunities out there for some really nice used furniture as well. I've met with furnishing companies, and we've met with evidence storage companies, and as well as the security providers and teledata systems. So that kind of encompasses the soft cost portion, construction costs. And getting into the construction costs, once again, focusing only on the south parking expansion, the new police addition, and only the locker area. That was the original scope that was priced last time. And that scope, we're now looking at specific systems. In other words, before it was more of a square foot pricing. Now we're getting into specific systems such as structural foundation systems, exterior skins, interior finishes, mechanical, electrical systems. So we've got a much more detailed estimate getting into those parts and pieces. In this piece of the budget, I'm carrying a 10% contingency of about $500,000 for a total budget of 5.479. I think I was at about 5.49 on the previous one. The added, as Ned had gone through, you notice that there's a lot more, there's roughly 5,600 square foot of renovation added to the project. And this gives you a general breakdown of those costs. I've allocated about $220,000 of the soft cost, and once again, a lot of that's the voice over IP. We're putting a full voice over IP throughout the police facility, security, the some furnishings, and then the allocation of design engineering fees. In addition to that, we've got the kind of the breakdown of the different spaces that Ned went through for total construction costs of about $410,000. In this budget, because I think there's a little bit more unknowns in that renovation work, I'm carrying a contingency of about 15% for a total budget of this of about $730,000. Combining the two projects, and I take the overall combination of the two projects, I look at phase one, the south parking at about $250,000, the new addition at about 3.7, and then the renovations at about $530,000. Owner's contingency is a little over 10%, but at about $600,000, and soft costs at 1.1. So the total budget that I'm coming up with the original and the added renovations is about $6.2 million. Expenditures to date, to this point, we've spent about $65,000 to get us through the design development, which is kind of our next phase. Will be about $132,000. That'll primarily be design fees, but also include some site investigations, doing some soils analysis, also some hazmat testing of the existing building to make sure that we don't have any issues in that as well. But that would get us through about the end of January. And in the end of January, 1st of February, we would be coming back and looking for kind of a notice to proceed with construction documents. And I'll touch on schedule here in a second. total budget through January 2010 would be about just under $200,000. Schedule, right now we're in the, or we're looking for the approval of the schematic design package and authorization to move forward with the design development. And we'd be working on that over the next few months, getting to a council approval of DDs in the end of January, 1st of February. After that, we'd be preparing the construction documents. We'd be continuing on with plan permit approval, also bidding it out, probably bidding it out in the month of, mostly in the month of May, and looking for a notice to proceed with construction of mid-June. And in construction, roughly I'm looking at phase 1 to be about 2 months, which is the parking lot improvement. Phase 2 would be about 11 months. And that's the new addition, and then phase 3 would be about another 3 months, and there'll be a little bit of overlap there and some moving some people around that we've sat down with the police group and we've kind of gone through a process in which, you know, how are we going to relocate people so that we're not impacting operations, or that we're impacting operations as little as possible. And with that, that's kind of an overview of design, budget, and schedule.
Thank you, Scott. Questions?
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
What is the total square footage of new construction is 15,369? Or 14,250?
Yeah, it's really, the new construction's 14,250. The locker area renovation's another 1,119 square feet.
But that's in the old building, right?
That's in the old building, yes.
Okay.
All, the new construction is 14,250.
And the remodel's 5,600?
It's 5,600 plus the 119. And I don't know if I've got that number in front of me.
647 plus 1119.
Correct.
67, 66.
6766 is the renovation.
Okay. You had mentioned on the second phase, in the evidence storage area, that the mezzanine area would be future construction. So is that,
What that is, and it could be immediate. It's one of those, one of our approaches to managing the budget is kind of creating the things that we need to have and the things that we can, either, depending on what our budget is or what our budget comes out, we can add on towards the end. And you notice that we had a $600,000 contingency. Some of that contingency we're going to hang on through the project, and as we get closer to the end, we can add those types of things back in. And what we've done with this estimate, we said, okay, we've got a high bay of approximately 22 feet, and we're putting in a high-density storage unit that'll go about 10 feet up. And this is one of those high-density storage units that collapses on itself. It's a rack system that collapses on itself. So I have a price of about, $250,000 to come in, and if we can do it, at the end of construction, great. If we can't, roughly the cost is another $250,000 to put up kind of a cage mezzanine system with a stair to allow us to put another 10-foot section of, dense storage on. So whether we do that, immediately, or whether it's something that's done down the line, it gives us a little bit of flexibility on the budget. Right now, the 10-foot storage, the first level, would be more than adequate to meet the evidence needs.
Scott, can I clarify something too? When we talk about mezzanine, we're not talking about a structural floor mezzanine. We're talking about a mezzanine that's actually part of the storage system. So what we would do today to accommodate that is I'm going to go with a thicker floor slab. So in the future, if we build that mezzanine, it's basically just building in like erector set parts, or bringing in erector set parts and building it. It's not pouring concrete or joist or steel deck. It's part of the system.
so it's not construction, it's,
It's not construction per se, no.
Okay.
It's basically equipment type cost.
okay. You had said that the parking lot had a right in, right out. I see right out only.
It is ride out only.
I'm corrected.
Okay.
Right now, we're showing as ride out only.
Yep.
Part of that was to avoid some existing trees, too.
Okay. A question on the phases. You said that you were looking at two months to put the parking lot in?
Yeah, I'm figuring about 2.5 months. And what I've done is I'm figuring while they're finishing up the parking lot the last 2 weeks, they'll be mobilizing in the back, so that there's a little bit of overlap there. So roughly, 2.5 months.
Would it not be possible to start them simultaneously?
I think the concern is that if I start the construction in the back, because absolutely, if I could, theoretically, if I could do all of this simultaneously, I could cut the schedule down to, 11 months. The concern is that if I take up the parking in the back, if we lose those 20, probably 30 spaces, when you figure in the construction area, probably even more than that, you might even be approaching 40 spaces. You lose those, 30 to 40 spaces in the back, and you don't have a place for that parking, you're going to cause some problems to operations.
If we did lose those, what would it cut the schedule? How many months would we?
Probably a couple of months.
And how much money would that save?
Probably mostly overhead and profit.
Yeah,
and
I was
just the
thinking
admin.
30 grand.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the general conditions and overhead on the parking lot project, which is $250,000 parking lot project, and then general conditions and overheads probably somewhere around 10%.
Okay. Think, just a second. Parking lot, I'm looking at that, and I guess this is probably more discussion on council as to whether that would really be part of this budget, or that might be other
I don't
funding.
think you can separate them. I don't think you can separate it.
Does it matter?
Well, it would save $250,000 on this project.
But we still have to spend it. Just a question of whether,
Which pot it comes out of.
yeah, what you call it.
My other question is, well, are we going to ask questions of other people later, or is this just on this right now? Do I have to use all my questions right now? Will I get another chance?
No, you could have another chance.
Okay, then I'll stop.
I mean, the whole team is here. Debbie, if you have questions for Chief
Well, I don't want to
Coogan,
get
for any...
off topic.
You could take a
for-
breath, though, and,
Okay, somebody else can go for a minute.
John?
John, can you pull the mic down so we get you on tape?
When this construction is complete, how close to capacity are we going to be as far as filling it? You mentioned the evidence storage, how we can expand that. How about the rest of the square footage? Is it totally utilized? If the department grows in the future, can this building grow, or is it maxed out?
I know, and I'll let Chief Coogan answer as well, but I know we were kind of, constrained to, the focus of the 14,002-foot, 250 square foot addition. And we were trying, as you've seen in the existing building as well as the addition, we've tried to maximize the use of that space. And I'll let Chief Coogan add on.
We will be pretty much maxed out, but we had some discussions about what our needs were, and for the addition, it addressed all the different needs that we had identified when we first started talking about this project 2 years ago. If you look out at the build-out of Littleton and the number of officers we think we're going to add, we believe that this is going to last us for a very long time. Even if we were to add another 10% to the department, we still have enough room to operate within this for that period of time. And considering the amount of buildup out that we would see in Littleton, that probably would fill it. The main concern we had when we start talking about evidence was, where do we go 20 years from now when we have all this additional evidence? So that was a big part of our discussions, to make sure that there's enough room. But we added a lot of things, the soft interview rooms, some volunteer space, the ability to do the training, the EOC. So yes, we'll be using all the space, but we believe it'll last us for a very long time.
Okay, thank you. And will you be using the parking lot on the east side as the staging area for construction materials and everything? Or where do you visualize that taking place?
My expectation is that, pretty much these spaces along here will be out of service. And I think we worked through the city with that, and they're okay with that. We're going to leave access for the Sally Port. I think that's the critical piece there. We've talked about relocating the trash, bin over in front, near the fire station temporarily. This is, and I think even during this time, it's going to be a fairly short period. We can probably move this fence in once they get this building kind of out of the ground. As far as the parking lot across the creek, I think that would be an ideal spot for subcontractor, parking, as well as, staging and storing of some materials as well. So, and that was, we haven't obviously put a bid package out, together yet, but there are things that we can put in this package as, to constrain, contractors and their access and, those types of things.
Good, thank you. That's all I have.
Did I see that we lose a parking space, a handicap parking space in there?
I think we added it back,
Adding a space and
right up here.
access aisle to convert pre-existing spaces into 2 handicap spaces, because by total parking spaces, we're slightly short by 1 space. So we're trying to
Is that van handicap, or is that just handicap
Those are universals, so they're van.
or van?
Yep.
And is there any way that you might interrupt or bother the people over in the Geneva Village area? Or any of the trees over there that are placed there in the memory of people?
Well, and you can see here, this is the tree they were talking about to kind of, widen these drive aisles here and here to make this radius much better. We discussed creating this parking lot so that at some point in the future, you could tie it into this parking area. But right now, we're staying away from that. I guess I'm not sure. To answer your question, I don't think we've done anything specifically with Geneva as far as, showing them these plans.
At this point, Scott, I don't think anything we're doing is going to impact the trees that Councilman's talking about. We're east of all those trees and south.
And you're not bothering the village when you're under construction?
No, we shouldn't, because all of our major construction activities are going to be east of the building. So the city hall itself is going to block really all the noise, dust, everything. And then the south parking area, as Scott mentioned, is going to be a pretty quick construction activity, mostly grading, curbs, and paving. So it's going to be pretty straightforward. So I don't see that as being a disruption.
If I can help on this a little bit, if I can, right up here, these are the memorial.
Charlie, introduce yourself for the audience.
I'm Charlie Bloston, Director of Public Services for the city. In answer to your question, Councilman Mulvey, the trees up here are memorial trees. They will not be touched. There are some memorial trees in this area, and anyone that is affected can be relocated and moved to another part of the site. So they will not be removed and thrown away. They're just being relocated if they need to be. The tree to be removed from the site is here, and it's an original tree to the entire Littleton Center grounds.
It's not historic, is
No.
it, Charlie?
And there may be some effect on some other trees along here. Several of these on the main aisle are stressed, overly mature trees, according to David Flagg. But the trees that anything that's affected here is mainly grass area. But anything that, as you're referring to the memorial trees, they can be relocated with their plaque and everything.
Thank you. And one other question, under soft cost, does that include any furniture or any new $10,000 desks, boardroom desks and chairs?
It does include furniture, and we've gone through and looking at the added offices that we've done, and we've done a very modest, allowance for the various offices. We've reused as much of the furniture as we, basically all the existing furniture is being reused. And we're, I'm going with very, mid-grade furniture, even thinking, I can take, 10, 15% out of that by doing some of it used. But that is all covered in that soft cost number. And roughly my furniture cost is, I'll say, 150 to 175,000.
Thank you.
Other question, Jim?
Scott, bring up one of the site plans, if you would, please. That one would work. I was told previously when we were discussing addition to this building for police facilities that it could not be physically attached to the building without having to go through a lot of upgrading to bring this existing building up to code because of the amount of square footage that you're putting on there.
We've done a code analysis, Councilman Taylor, and actually discussed this at length with building official Jim Thielen. And basically, we're considering this a separate building. It's separated by fire doors, and this building is going to be fully sprinklered. The addition is going to be fully sprinklered. So the upgrades to the existing building are minimal, and really only in the areas where we're doing renovation.
So we don't have to bring this
That's
western
correct.
part up to code?
That's correct.
Okay. The ventilation system, I'm assuming you have been in consultation with the group who's been studying this whole building about ventilation
Yes.
through Phil Cortese's work. You've been consulting with them.
We're working with them on the performance contract that Phil's working on right now, and we're trying to integrate that and make sure that anything we do is compatible with that and that we take advantage of anything that they're doing, and vice versa.
Okay. And I missed where the backup generator location is going to be, and my question there is going to be how secure is that area?
It's an existing generator, and my understanding is it's on the second floor. It's a diesel generator on the second floor by fire. So it's we're tying into that, and we've done a little bit of analysis. There looks like there's some capacity there.
Okay, I thought you were building us a new one, and I had missed it in here. The exterior skin, I'm assuming that is silver aluminum with black window treatment. Is that the way I was looking at that?
Well, it's not necessarily silver. It's more of a brushed aluminum finish is what we're proposing right now to be more compatible with the mullions and so forth here. And then it'd be a tinted glass, and we haven't actually picked the actual tint, but it's a high-performance low-E glass.
Because this building now exists with lots of black aluminum frames, and that would be another tie-in to the building to keep that black theme going. Bring up the second floor plan, if you would, please.
Second floor? The addition or renovation?
Right there, that will work. Where the receptionist is for the waiting area for victims to come in, how is that separated? Because it's designated as being part of the secure area. How is that separated from the general public, and how will they communicate with each other?
That note 32, right below the reception desk, that's actually a sliding secure window, so the receptionist can see through there if someone's out there, and then she'll walk around to that counter.
Is there a need for bulletproof glass there?
We don't have it now, but it does separate them from sex offenders. Some of them may walk up.
Okay. I think that's all I've got right now.
Jose?
You were speaking about the storage units and the evidence storage, that you were only going to put in one phase of those, which is about, what, 10 feet high?
Yeah.
And what was the cost of that,
That's about,
approximately?
well, we're also as part of that, we're also doing some pallet racks for larger items.
Right.
So with the pallet racks and the high-density racking system, it's about $225,000.
Okay, you'd have to put some more of those in the future. Isn't that correct?
Correct. We would put in this, this piece of equipment, which is the mezzanine structure over the top of that with an additional set of high-density storage. And right now, that's priced at about $250,000.
Okay, my theory is if we're going to do it, we should all do it all right now, so that a lot of times people talk about it, well, we'll do it later, and then somebody's going to have to come down here and ask for $250,000 for that, and they're going to be arguing it's supposed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's my personal feeling, is that it should be accomplished immediately, all of it.
The nice thing about that is that we can, that's one of the last things to go into the building. So it's not something that's not a decision that has to be made immediately. If you tell us to go ahead and, budget it for it, we can absolutely do it. If there's something comes up, if we run into some unforeseen soil condition where we have to do something different than, in the structural, because when they excavate down there or we run into something, it does give us a little bit of flexibility.
And Jose, you're raising a very good point that as we get further down and when we get to bid stage, when we see the actual dollars, council can come back and revisit this. But as you can tell, the direction to the design team was to keep this initial budget as close to that $6 million cap that we had originally set as possible. And we were obviously, given all the discussions council's had about how much money you want to commit to this, concerns about is the economy going to stay strong or come back through 2010. So it's just a balancing act. But certainly the flexibility is there if let's just say we go to bid in June and the bids just come in really, really good, and there's some extra money on the table. I think that's an option that council would have at that point.
Okay. Thank you.
Jim?
Speaking of that very subject, we have a lot of discussion of this at the Council of Governments level about bids coming in, particularly with the ERA funds out there. And some of the bids are coming in very good, very low over what the engineer's estimates have been, and some have been very high. Even to the point where I believe one project was just, all bids got rejected because they were much higher than what they thought. So the bids are coming in for construction all over the place right now. So the faster we can get to bid, I think the better off we're going to be.
I would agree. I mean, it's tough. It's like playing the stock market. Are things going to continue to go down, or are they going to come back? And, if you assume that they're going to come back, then the sooner you get to bid, the better off you're going to be.
Peg, do you have anything?
I've got a bunch of questions.
Okay.
And not necessarily any intelligent order, it's just how I wrote them down when I was going through this, and then as you all spoke. So some got scribbled all over. Is it possible to do the parking lot out front before we start the main piece? To get a jump start?
It's really yes, to answer your question, absolutely, you could do that. Part of me says that if you can package all of this as one project and bid it out together,
Would be cheaper.
You'll get some economies of scale. You'll get, somebody who's, they're going to, be willing to do a lot more, and they'll be willing to, assume that their, general conditions costs, their superintendents can, deal with both spaces. It's something that we can definitely look at, but my gut tells me if you can bid this all as one package, you might be better off. The parking lot, though, is really, if you wanted to bid it out to just a site work contractor, it may make sense. And if that was something that you were, interested in kind of breaking that package out separately, getting a jump on it and getting that work done. The other piece that's nice to know is it's nice to know, have a firm contract for the entire project before you start any of it. If you bid out the parking lot and, you know, for some reason the market turns or you run into some issues and your addition bids out over, then, you know, do you start thinking, gee, maybe I shouldn't have done that parking lot, or maybe I wouldn't have done the project. So a lot of it depends on your risk tolerance.
I was just thinking several things. One is it clears the way to just hit the ground running with the main project. Would help stimulate, hopefully, maybe local economy, help some people. So I'm just thinking out loud on that. And right now, people are pretty hungry, to get projects. So that we don't need an answer right.
Yeah, and Peggy, I just had a little sidebar with Charlie. Let us think a little bit about that. Given the fact that we probably wouldn't want, what Scott told you is yes, technically it could be broken out. It wouldn't be a big, difficult chore to write the specifications and bid that out. We probably would not want to build it till the spring anyway, just because of weather conditions and not having the contractor in there working in the mud and that kind of stuff. But why don't you let us think about the pros and cons of that?
Okay.
It's definitely an option. Whether we'd pick up enough time, and I certainly understand the questions that Debbie raised about accelerating the schedule, but give us a little time to think about it. I think it's a good question, a good option. We just need to think about the pros and cons a little bit more.
And one of the things you may want to tie in with that is we've had this discussion going on for a period of time about trying to do something with Rio Grande. If Rio Grande happens to come about in 2010, that contractor might be, because he's already in here with all of his equipment, might be a person who could do a parking lot.
Yeah, we'd have to kind of just look at the logistics of that in terms of having Rio Grande under construction and then having a contractor trying to mobilize and get in to build this building. We just need to sit down, I think, with our engineering team and intergroup and their engineering team and just kind of evaluate that, how that all might work together, where might be some conflict points. But it's certainly, I think, a reasonable request for council to ask us to look at.
Okay, now, this one's totally out of order, but can we get a copy of the computer program that you did? Is that something that would run on most of our computers?
The slideshow?
Yeah,
That's a PowerPoint. If you have PowerPoint or PowerPoint viewer.
yeah.
Want PowerPoint, or I got this printed out, in a PDF. Basically.
PDF.
PDF works. Okay, and
We could just, I can just forward it to you. I mean, I've got, basically you want an electronic copy.
Yeah, that would be good.
Sure.
And if they want PDFs too, thanks. Can we add at least one story to this?
We've looked at that as an option, and we're still looking at that as a possibility. It adds a lot of complexity to, one, the mechanical system we use, because right now the mechanical system we're proposing is on the rooftop. And if we design it for another story, I have to design a completely different mechanical system, which is going to be significantly more expensive, and it's also going to take out land on the ground out of parking areas.
Okay.
And so we haven't ruled that out, but there's some constraints that make it maybe not, and it also make the construction more expensive at what would be now our second floor roof, because now I have to design that like a floor. With a higher floor load, it has to be level. There's just a number of issues around it.
I was inferring that, but since it was a question that I was interested in over the months, I thought I better ask.
Yes, ma'am, and we evaluated that. It's possible. At this point, we're not sure it's
That's okay.
desirable.
Okay. Now, some of these questions, maybe Chief will need to, and then I'll get back to some different ones. I went back and looked at what you said when you went to Breezax in the copy of what council received that related to what you said there. So I had a couple questions, several questions about different spaces, because they may be being used for more than one thing, but I'm trying to just see that. Is there an area for people, public to, and I guess legal folks to view property and evidence?
Yes, that is in the first floor addition. I think we could probably point it out to you, but yes, that did get built into the evidence section.
So what is that called?
Just go back one slide, Scott.
And I'm sorry, these questions are going to be jumping from floor to floor, I suspect, but
Right here.
it's what?
Evidence
Review right
Evidence
there.
review room.
Okay, so that's review for the public, too.
If you remember when we talked about the evidence and what we were lacking, some of the things we wanted to address was the viewing room. We wanted to address drying rooms to be able to dry bloody clothing, a way to bring in bulk evidence. We wanted a place to release evidence to the public.
Right.
That was secure for them. That's on that back end.
Okay, that's okay. I didn't know if the release area was also a viewing area.
They're two separate areas.
Okay, okay. Is there a SWAT armory?
No, there is not. That is within the building, but not specifically a SWAT armory. But if you look in the evidence section, we do have a section that meets CALIA guidelines for the firearms that are evidence.
Okay. Is there a set office?
It's in the hallway in the renovated section, right by the back doors.
Let me find it.
No, it's on the first floor.
Community outreach. It's community outreach, Scott, right there.
Wait a minute. Okay, okay. Quartermaster place for the department-issued equipment?
It's in the second edition, on the second floor, in the detective area, there's a storage area for quartermaster. And we moved the support functions upstairs by the training room.
SRO office?
That's part of the community set team,
Okay.
first floor.
Accident reconstruction office?
That's next to the community resource, where it says traffic office. Those are the officers that are currently over at the service center, and they'd be coming back.
Okay. Red light technology office?
We don't have a separate office. That would be handled through the traffic office.
The EOC, that's in the training room, is it?
Yes, and we designed that to be multifunctional, so it has all of the computer hookups, telephone lines, the ability to convert it, and we put it outside of the secured area, so should there be an emergency and we had to operate for a period of time, people in the building could use all of that space as an emergency or a second business function area and have all of the support that it needs.
Okay. Where would we do the lineup for IDing people? So if we have to have a few people lined up for the victim to ID?
We do that by computer. We don't do that in person generally.
Okay, so we wouldn't change that piece of it, okay. Half a second. On the second floor, I think it's just the second, we've got these odd-shaped rooms, like, the thing that you, on the second floor with the outer wall, the one with the curving where the commander is on that is it northwest?
Yes.
Coming around one of the, anyway, so several of those things, plus some angles over there with the detective offices. And then the hallway in front of the conference viewing area and so forth. Are we going to have custom-built cabinets and things in there, in those rooms?
No, those rooms are large enough, and the angles are flat enough angles, are not so acute that we won't have to do custom casework.
Well, this sounds silly, but what will go in the so-called corners?
Well, if you use a typical rear credenza and a side credenza, because the angle's not that flat, they're not connected. So it'll still be functional without being a custom piece. In other words, if it was a 45-degree angle, I'd have to make a custom piece, but because the angle is a very shallow angle, I can use standard furniture there.
Well, I know some people who have lost stuff behind these little spaces that exist like that. In fact, my nephew's cat got behind a bookcase that nobody knew was back there. I mean, the cat, they couldn't find the cat. It fell down and I guess kept quiet. But anyway, I'm I'm used to some buildings, I'm familiar with some buildings where some weird stuff happens, even when you just have a little bit of the kind of angle that we're looking at here.
You know, again, we haven't laid out the furniture in every room, Councilperson, but I think that, I just don't think that it's a significant problem because the angles are relatively small. And as we look at the furniture, you know, we'll definitely keep that in mind.
Well, on the one at least, we've got a whole rounded corner, so that...
Be freestanding. I mean, none of the furniture we're proposing is built-in furniture, so it's all freestanding units.
So I maybe want you to think about that, but I'm not using those rooms, so...
Okay.
Where will the Citizens Academy meet?
In the training room?
Okay, and, all righty. Just a second. So would they take the whole room without the divider, or will they be in part of it?
The room is capable of being divided, but, you know, one of the constraints we've always had is we've never been able to enlarge the Citizens Academy because of space. The room without the divider, I believe, is 100.
It's 100 without the divider,
It'll hold
Chief.
100 people without the divider.
Okay, so I mean, really, really nice size.
Yes.
And then if you divided it approximately 50 people, which is almost, was about twice what we now can use.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Okay. And will the briefing room be used for other activities?
No, that's on the first floor, and that is just for briefings of officers. The roll call is a fairly small number. It will have a computer in there, and we'll be able to advise officers about what the daily activities are, but it'll fit officers just that size.
Okay.
And it's in the secured area, so it's not a public area.
And do we have an idea of how much we'll save annually for rental of the containers for evidence? And I know that varies depending on what's happening, but do we have any idea on that?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but we will be eliminating the 3 storage units that are out back, as well as the storage units that we have at the Quonset hut over at the service center. So the only thing we'll be keeping is the Quonset hut.
But also eliminating some we're renting, right?
Yes.
So maybe...
I think that's 5 or 6 units.
So maybe just for the heck of it, have some idea of that?
We can get that number for you.
I know it won't pay for a parking lot, but it still would be of interest.
Commander Christensen may have it.
I think it's about, off the top of my head, it's about $10,000.
Okay, so it's... Okay, thank you. I'm double checking. I think I got them all. Oh, I missed something. Where will the children and/or families of victims be when they're being...
That's in the second floor on the renovated section. Help me out here, it's right outside this, no, we were there.
No, it's just going,
The second floor. It's on the second floor as they come up in the public area. Yeah. See where it says waiting, and then it says toilet and soft interview?
Oh, okay.
And what we'd like to do is put a couch and maybe some play equipment in there for families, children, that type of thing. And the restroom is for a victim to have the ability to get
Yeah.
cleaned up and not have to go into a public area or outside to do that.
Okay. And child victims, are they going to be in a special area?
We generally would use that soft interview room,
Okay.
but depending on the type of crime that may involve the child, we actually take them to Sungate, which specializes in interviewing young children,
Okay.
depending on the age of the child.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's it.
Deb, back to you.
Well, you took too long to get back to me because I came up with an idea.
No.
I'm not an architect, I just play one on council. I'm looking at the parking area to the east of, how many spaces are in there?
Are you, oops.
9 spaces, 10?
You mean
11?
now, or?
No,
a conclusion on site plan 1?
There are
Yeah.
18 just south of the addition. And then, well, there's 18 against the addition, and then there's probably 10 on the other side of that drive.
And there needs to be access in there for the Sally Port?
No, not Sally,
Or back in here, there needs to be access back to here.
about the other side.
Is that what you're,
What about,
this is the vehicle exam down?
yeah, the vehicle exam, that, they come in on a tow truck usually, right? Okay. Is that adequate?
We've
There's
widened.
cars parked there?
Well, there's no parking back in that area. We've taken out all the parking except there's 2 spaces right there. which
Okay, those are the
really-
2.
Yeah, there's only 2 right in that area.
Okay.
And that's just for the evidence pickup. They're not for everyday use. So that entire area back there, we're leaving open for maneuvering.
Okay. What I did notice is missing, and it wasn't in the original marching orders, but I think it's something that I'd at least like to have some conversation about, is dispatch. And, I think I was on council for a month, and we went over there and took a tour of their facility, and it was cramped then, and it's still cramped. And if we're going to make some changes and do some moving around, then did we give any consideration at all to what we might be able to do to move dispatch over? I think that what Chief said about that, what you've designed here is what she needs. It's kind of, she's maxed it out, and there's enough room to grow for what we anticipate next 10, 20 years, do you think, depending? But dispatch is still kind of an unsettled issue.
Debbie, if you want, we could talk about this, but actually, we had discussion in the team about this. And again, because the notion here, if you remember, we wanted to address those critical operating needs. That's the commitment we made to you, the evidence storage, the locker rooms, those kinds of things. We realize dispatch is still not a resolved issue. I would say that we still have some cards to play on dispatch. We still have 7,000 square feet that we own up the street. We own 6,000 square feet on this building over here. This doesn't solve everything in terms of police or the rest of the building. We've still got some things to figure out with fire and with dispatch. So at this point, unless we were to really, I don't know how the design team would look at going back and trying to kind of come back and fit some dispatch space in there.
Well, if you've got that large area there that's open, I mean, I'm not, totally restart the planning or anything, but, I mean, that seems like wasted space at this point, since it's basically going to be used for a tow truck to come in and out of, and 2 cars to park.
I guess we could go look at the functionality of that, but I just wanted to let you know we did not forget dispatch.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it, but we think in terms of how this was fitting together, and again, we were trying to balance your concerns that we heard about the budget, and then trying to max out meeting those critical operational needs. But we talked about dispatch. We could go back and look at it, but I would also say to you that we've still got some options down the road for dispatch.
Well, and I'm not, nobody's bad that, like I said when I started, we didn't make that part of the conditions,
But we
as you're doing it, I mean, the printer will tell you the first one costs the most, all the others after that are free. In construction, it's a little bit like that too. I mean, you guys get in there and you start doing this, and if we add another X amount to make, to put dispatch in, or we maneuver or push this wall out a little further, something like that, what's the incremental cost to make those considerations? And we haven't talked about it, maybe something that we spend a little more time talking about.
All
Because
right.
you mentioned those two
Yeah.
other places, and that's a whole nother can of worms, Jim.
It is. We also, just for example, the point that Councilman Trujillo brought up about the additional storage, we were concerned about pushing that budget further and further up. I mean, so they were kind of reacting to me, quite frankly, trying to keep a lid on this and bring that in as close to the 6 million that we said to you. But if council is saying to us now, hey, we'd like for you to go back and look at these options, even though it may push that budget up a little further, we can certainly do that. So, very good question.
Anything else?
Not now.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, so just to follow up on what Debbie's asking, and you're referring to the 7,000 square feet up.
What we call the Sternberg building, yes,
Right.
ma'am. And then the Geneva Lodge, which we own and currently.
You suggested a month or two ago that we talk about using that building maybe for fire permit and so forth, or something, at our workshop in January, February.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just thinking out loud here with question. So potentially that building would have plenty of space if it were renovated for all the fire permit and the dispatch and maybe something else,
Well,
potentially?
And my favorite answer, which,
It
Suzanne
depends.
used today. She used the "it depends." I was very proud of her. It depends. And so what I suggested to you during the budget was we have a 7,000 square foot asset. And I'm proposing to you for 2010 that we need to start a more serious conversation about how to utilize that asset. The plan permit actually, because of their parking requirements, we're actually going to bring a proposal to you next week to lease some space in a private office building. If you recall, one of the things we needed to do was get them out of Station 11, where the planned permit is now, so that we can remodel that space. So we're moving actually quite a bit faster on that. But I certainly think dispatch, either both police and fire dispatch, or it could be some combination of fire administration. I don't know what the combinations could be. So if we start moving pieces out of here, then obviously it opens up more space in this building. So as Debbie said, there's lots of moving pieces of that, but we distinctly talked about dispatch, and it was not in this program. We were cognizant of it, and I, quite frankly, didn't want to push the budget any further than we had been given direction to do.
And I agree with Mr. Woods. I think that I don't want to see anything that's going to delay the start of construction. And if we start looking at redesigning by moving the dispatch someplace else as part of the new contract, I think is going to cause a delay, and I'm not really too enthused about that.
Well, I would agree. I'm not interested in a delay either, but I think this council needs to make a commitment to dispatch. I think we need to either make a commitment or not. And if Jim says
And from
that
what
they're
I-
looking at stuff for 2010, and you're going to bring that to us, then that's fine. But my opinion is dispatch isn't included in this at all. We need to do, there needs to be something done over there. And if it's not consensus, then so be it. But that's, and I agree. I mean, I don't want to slow the process down. I think we need to move ahead on this, but that's also one of those burning issues that I think we better deal with sooner than later.
Okay, anything else?
I just had one quick question, and then I'm done, I promise.
Okay.
I was wondering if there would be some place, and I see some outside areas that might work, where you could do some sort of kenneling for the canine units, the dogs, because it's my understanding that they can sit in those cars for quite some time while they're officers are in the building. So it would just seem to me that, they are considered officers at some level, and we're spending an awful lot of money on them. We could maybe put a couple kennels out there.
Instead of that, we're actually considering putting the kennels in the vehicle exam bay because that'll be conditioned space. So we're considering.
We actually
in there.
talked about that too, Debbie, and we definitely know that there's room in there.
Okay.
You could put it in that big northwest office on the second floor that has
The curved window.
We did
He
not forget
volunteered
the
that
dogs.
space.
All right, any other questions? In that case, do you need a decision from us?
Well, yes, sir. Well, we need two things. Well, next week you're going to have moving the money
Yes.
in front of you. And with that, then, we'll ask for your authorization to continue. As you know, we have a master contract with Intergroup, but we said we would bring it to you and let you approve it in phases. So we will be asking for your authorization to move to design development next week also.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much. It's obvious that you all have spent a great deal of time thinking about this. I think it's a very nice design. I think we're on the right path. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, team.
You ready?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council at this time go into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute Section 24-6-402-4B and 24-6-402-4E to receive legal advice and to give instruction regarding the intergovernmental agreement associated with the fire contract, and also pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402-4F to discuss a personnel matter, specifically to continue performance evaluation of the city manager.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to go into executive session. Any discussion? This takes 5 votes. Council ready?
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay, we will not be conducting any regular business after the executive session. Let's meet 5 after.